Hello, 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 and welcome. My name is Sabrina Victoria. This is Her Talk Show. I'm super, super excited to jump in. We're going to be talking all about my favorite subject, entrepreneurship, and how it is not for the faint of heart. We have Tammy Adams here that's going to be hanging out with us and chatting about this. So get comfortable as we explore the triumphs and the challenges faced by women worldwide in this arena. We're going to be offering some insights, some inspiration to fuel not only your personal, but obviously your professional growth. Let's jump in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
All right, if you're listening live, welcome. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can send you some love in the comments. We are here every day delving deep into the realms of health, wealth, and leadership with some of the most brilliant women globally. We've interviewed over 600 women, and today we are adding another one to the list. We have Tammy Adams, who spent over 30 years in the field of education and many years in HR. As an advanced grief recovery specialist, Tammy understands unresolved grief can limit an individual's capacity for happiness and is gifted at supporting individuals through the pain and isolation caused by an emotional loss of any kind to a place of happiness they believe no longer exists. I get that. Because when you're in the thick of it, right?
And, people don't even recognize grief or that they have it because there's so much misinformation around this topic. It's so taboo. It limits every way we show up in the world, relationships, career-wise, everything. It's present everywhere.
Wow, this is interesting. So what are some of the boxes? Can you give me an example of like one or two boxes that a lot of times people find themselves in or think they're finding themselves in?
Well, let's start that by saying people always define this as being stuck. I feel stuck, like I can't move forward, I'm stuck, but they can't put a definition on it beyond that. So what I'd like to do is invite the listeners to just filter their life experience through these 5 statements relative to grief. So the first thing is grief is a normal and natural response to an emotional loss of any kind. So that's where our mind usually goes. The death of a loved one, a broken relationship, maybe a lost career. The second thing is it's the conflicting emotions brought about by a change in something that was familiar. So you hear the stories all the time about lottery winners who have, got that big windfall and then they sabotage that win. They never dealt with those conflicting emotions going from paycheck to paycheck to now being able to have anything. The next thing is all those disappointments in our lives, those things that we wished had been better, different, or more. It's about the unrealized hopes, dreams, and expectations we had. And more importantly, it's about the things that were left unsaid. So we also have this misconception that grief is about sad things. And yes, it is about sad things. But the process works as well on strong, happy relationships as it does on toxic, sad ones, because there are still things that have been left unsaid. And then finally, the longer I do this work, what I believe really drives these unresolved emotions are our expectations of ourselves and our expectations of others. And when we don't show up, we end up with regret. And when someone else doesn't show up the way we expect them to, we have disappointment. And then all of those emotions go inside and they accumulate with all the other unresolved emotions. And then before we know it, our emotions are running the show and we really have lost control of our own life.
Yeah.
That answer the question?
Yes, 100%. And I want to talk more about this expectation thing, because I think that so many of us can relate to that, not only in this situation, but a lot of different situations. How does somebody alter their expectations for themselves and for others? How do we even begin to do that?
Well, I think one of the things, I know it's going to sound cliche, but I think one of the things is we need to go back and we need to resolve all the things of our past that have been left unresolved, because those are the things that are dictating how we see ourselves, what we expect from ourselves, what we expect from other people. And so one of the steps is to go back through that linear path of our life and kind of finish unfinished business. But then the other thing is to become aware. Like most of the time, we're not even aware that we have these expectations. You said swearing was okay, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we get pissed off at somebody because they didn't do what we expected them to do. And yet they didn't even know we had that expectation. So it's about trying to remain in the present moment. And one of the best ways to do that is to go back and clean up the mess that we left behind us that we don't even know exists.
That is good stuff. So appreciate that. So as far as grief goes, how did you find yourself being so passionate about this subject?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't go to funerals. I still don't. I don't go to cemeteries. I still don't. And I was actually working as a life coach, and I was working with a client who was describing themselves as stuck. And I couldn't move them forward. And I was actually one person on a team of people trying to move this particular individual forward from where they were.
Wow.
And a colleague suggested that I call the Grief Recovery Institute. She said, I really think this is the missing piece. And I said, no, you don't understand. Like, I don't do that. I don't go to funerals. I don't go to cemeteries. I certainly don't do grief. Like, no, that's not me. And she was one of those really good friends and colleagues who pushed me. And so I picked up the phone. I called the Institute. I asked them to tell me more about what it was they did. And they said, you're already doing it. You just don't know you are. And so I went ahead and I got the certification. And one of the things that the Grief Recovery Institute really stresses is don't hang your shingle out to help other people till you take care of your own stuff, which is exactly what I did. I went back to my childhood. I cleared all of that stuff. And what was really cool is I had been an entrepreneur for about 3 years at this point, and I was doing all those things you do as an entrepreneur, kind of dipped my toe in here, got this certification, kind of added it to my toolbox. And at that point in time, my business was basically energy work like Reiki, access bars, meditation, and life coaching. And I was still looking for my elevator speech. I was just, really still looking for that sweet spot. And I remember going to this networking meeting and talking about the grief recovery method. And what was so cool is the whole room just erupted in applause. And I couldn't understand why. And they said, you found it. You found what you've been looking for. And so today, I only really offer two things in my business. I offer the grief recovery, and then I also offer personality assessments. If once people come out of this and they still, okay, I'm still kind of lost, I need a blueprint to move forward. So that's a really long story for if you had ever told me that number one, I would be doing this work, and number two, that I would love it the way that I do, I would have told you you were crazy. But I think I was always that person that showed up after everyone else left. And I guess I'm still that person who shows up after everyone else has left.
Wow. Great story. Very, very cool. When you talk about the importance of knowing yourself, I think this has a lot to do with their journey.
Absolutely.
Really diving in, knowing themselves, knowing what they have to offer. What are some steps that somebody can take to begin to really know themselves?
I think I'm going to start by bringing it back to the personality assessment. And here's why I'm going to start that as the starting point. I've been doing this since 1995. And when I was first introduced to it, I discovered two things. One was, for the first time, I felt like I had permission to be myself. And the second thing was, I felt like somebody had been looking over my shoulder my entire life. Like I really connected with who I was. And I was in my 30s when I was, introduced to this. The reason it's so important is if you ask somebody who they are, they'll usually say, I'm a teacher, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter. But we don't have the words to articulate who we really are because we really don't know. So when you do a personality assessment, what it does is it gives you a blueprint for you to build your life decisions upon, because it not only helps you to identify your values, but it helps you to articulate them. You see what causes you stress. You see what motivates you and excites you. You see what your skills are. You see the situations that you want to avoid. And because you have this blueprint of really solid information of who you are, what you do and what I do still to this day is if I'm going to make a decision, I will filter it through my value system. Does this align with who I am? And if it does, I say yes. Stress level falls, my success rate goes up. But if I don't filter it through that value system, then what I'm doing is I'm guessing. And most times we guess that wrong. And then it's like we're swimming upstream against the current, because what we really want to do is we want to show up by writing with our dominant hand. So when you write with your dominant hand, it's fast, it's easy, you don't have to think about it, it's natural, it's comfortable. That's the place you want to build.
Okay.
Anybody can do anything. I'm not saying they can't. But when you step into a career role, when you step into a relationship, when you step into something where you're writing from your other hand, well, think about it. It's slow. You have to work really hard at it. You've got to think about it. You've got to be careful. And even though you can achieve the task at hand, it's never as good or clear as it is when you're writing with your other hand.
Got it.
That's why it's so important to know who you are, because then those life decisions can be filtered through your own value system.
Wow. Like quickly without even thinking. It's just so obvious.
Yeah.
Great analogy. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what a value system is and how does somebody find out what their value system is?
What is a value system? So let's start with myself. One of the values that drive me, I need to make an emotional connection with someone. Like it has to be authentic. It has to be true. I have to make that connection. I'm driven by helping and supporting and educating other people. And even though I kind of found my sweet spot with the grief recovery, when I look at my entire career, everything fits this value system. I was always in a role where I was supporting others, I was educating, I was teaching, I was researching. But there are three other personality types. So one of them would be, their value system would be consistency. They're task oriented, they're work base oriented. They need structure. They're not good at surprises. So everything that they want to choose needs to be defined in some kind of a framework. So think of a bookkeeper, a dentist, a secretary. They are the backbone to any organization, but they need to be in that environment to feel comfortable. Then there's another one who's more like, say, Sherlock Holmes. Okay. So they are that investigative research. They need autonomy. They need to be stroked for their accomplishments and their knowledge, because that's all they do is research and learn and learn. And so a lot of times you'll find that specific fields of law fall into that, urban planning, anything with science, research, that sort of thing. And then the other one is more spontaneous. They are motivated, their value system is motivated by creativity, by spontaneity. They don't break rules intentionally, but they really want to experience life. And so my husband, for example, he is a mechanic by trade, but he taught the skilled trades in high school. And at one point in his career, he was a department head. And his personality is the one that I'm describing. And they are very action oriented, like don't put them in a box. And he would come home from a staff meeting and his analogy would be, today I just wanted to move the water glass. So his personality would just pick up the glass and move it. But you've got all these personalities sitting around the table. So then the questions would start. Well, what time are we going to move the glass? How many people are going to touch it? What's going to happen if it spills? You know, all these kind of other personality types come in. Because he understood this, he could have patience and address those different value needs before they move the water glass. But with his personality, it's just, I'm just going to move it. If it spills, we'll deal with it. We don't need 14 people to touch it. I'm just going to move the glass. Does that help?
Yeah, great. 100%. So when it comes to our value system, how does that translate into our business life? Us as an entrepreneur, are they the same or are they different?
So there are a lot of different value or personality assessments out there. So the one that everybody's familiar with is Myers-Briggs. And Myers-Briggs has 16 personality types with it. But it can be broken down to 4, 4, 4, and 4. And so one of the tests is whatever personality assessment people use, they should be able to break it down into 4. Now, again, I'm going to say anybody can do anything. That's not the point I'm making, that if you are this personality, you can't do that. But you want to, as an entrepreneur, enter into that field writing with your dominant hand. So if I'm a relationship person who really wants to educate and help people, well, I don't want to be in a structured, organized environment. That's going to tie both my hands behind my back, and I am not going to be able to do my job. I need to have that ability to connect with the people and be authentic and that sort of thing. I need those other people to keep me in line because I don't have structure in my personality. So they play a really important role. But that would be an example. If you put me in a structured environment, you're just going to cripple me and I'm just going to slowly die within that situation. And so it becomes so important as an entrepreneur to know your values, know your skills, know the type of environment that you want to be in so that you can really excel in that environment and really shine as your authentic self. Because one of the things that I'm learning the longer I'm an entrepreneur, people don't buy your service. They don't buy your company. They don't buy your education. They buy you. Yeah. And the more authentic you are, the more you let that energy go out, the greater your chances of people coming to you and purchasing your service because they see you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. When you think about your personal entrepreneurial journey, what were some of the challenges you had?
I think one of the challenges I had was I had always worked in the corporate world. So someone had always looked after me as paycheck goes, making sure that, I had a job, that sort of thing. And the biggest challenge for me was going from that safety and security and entering into the entrepreneurial world where, it's feast or famine, right? You can't look at this on a weekly basis. You have to look on it at an annual basis. You have to look back at the end of the year and go, yeah, that all worked out. But if you look at it day to day, week to week, You will lose your mind.
Yeah.
So that was one of them. And I think the other thing was too, I have a lot of education behind me. I have a lot of experience behind me. I was very confident in what I had to offer. But I think one of the mistakes, well, that I made anyways, is I thought it would be my friends that would support me and help me to build my business. And that was a really hard lesson to learn. I had to start from scratch. It wasn't their responsibility to build my business. That's one of those expectations, right? That leads to disappointment, right? You've got to find a way to make it on your own. And I remember when I started, people said, give yourself 5 years, 5 good years to get this going. And I have an incredible husband, and he said to me, I'll just work a couple extra jobs and we'll just let this find its path. And I can remember in those first 3 years so many times saying, like, I'm done, I'm quitting, I can't make. And he would just say, I'm over here working the jobs. You're not quitting because I know you can make it.
Wow.
And so now I don't need him to support my business. But I think there's so many entrepreneurs that give up just as they're ready to make it.
Yeah.
And it's not for the faint of heart. Absolutely. Because you've got to be really secure in who you are, what you have to offer, and you've got to be ready to pivot. I changed and changed and changed. And I was just talking to a new entrepreneur the other day, and she said, oh, I just feel like all I'm doing is taking courses. And then I'm like, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. I said, no, keep doing it. You're right on track. That's how you find. And none of this is a waste of time. You may or may not use it in the future, but you've got to take the training. You've got to tip your dough into all these different places in order to find out who you really are.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that is one of the biggest ones, is really recognizing that no one's going to save you.
No.
Yeah, you have to save yourself. So was your mark around the 5-year mark, like most people say?
I think it really kind of kicked in. Let's see. I found grief recovery in 2016. I would say I opened my business in 2015. I would say it started to shift about the 3-year mark. You could see the gradual increase, like it was, things were starting to come together. It was starting to make sense. But I think I really reached that place where I felt comfortable that I was going to make it about the 3-year mark.
Nice.
And I don't think if I hadn't found grief recovery, I may not have moved as quickly as I did. But this was what I came here to do. I really believe that I could do this till I'm 100 and it wouldn't bother me at all.
That's great. I totally get that. Speaking of that, and you mentioned pivoting several times, be okay with pivoting or refocusing, or I don't know exactly what word you used, but and now I could see the sparkle in your eye, the passion of where you are right now. How does somebody know when they have arrived on that thing, on their purpose?
Oh, that's a good question. All right, I'm going to use myself as an example. So I've been a professional speaker, I've been a teacher, I've done all these things, and I always had to have a piece of paper in my hand. It was kind of like my feather, with Dumbo the elephant. It was kind of my feather. It was my security blanket, because I always admired people who could just talk off the top of their head. And even though I was comfortable in front of a group of people, I always had to have that piece of paper either in my hand or on the podium in front of me. And when I found grief recovery, I could talk about this for days off the top of my head, no notes, and not miss a point or not miss what I wanted to say. I think for me personally, that was when I knew I found it. Like, it's just so normal and natural for me to talk about this. It's not a struggle. I don't have to remember. I don't have to think about it. It's just there.
Beautiful. It's good. I love it. I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. You know, they're looking for their passion, their purpose. However, I do also see individuals that are fearful of pivoting. You know, they're not quite aligned. I hear that a lot, like, oh, I'm uncertain, I'm not really sure. That's a pivot. That's a pivot that's needing to be made. But individuals a lot of times feel like they're failing. They're doing it wrong. They picked wrong. They did it bad. Instead of just realizing that the journey that is the journey. Part of the journey is the pivot. You know, I've pivoted several times. Well, this has been great. I loved learning about, you know, your business, what you have going on. For those listening live, or on the replay, grief recovery, resilience, relief, and reconnection. Who should be reaching out to you? Who do you help?
Well, I would have given a different answer a long time ago, but now everyone should reach out because every movie, every TV show, every novel, every play, every plot is driven by unresolved emotions. And because we live in a Western society that teaches us to bury our emotions and to run away from our emotional pain, we are so held back in life. And it's funny when people come to work with me, it's usually because of a very big loss. And they've usually been carrying it for a while, and they'll call and they'll say, you know, I don't know if you can help me. Nobody else has been able to, but I can't live like this anymore.
Mm.
And to put this in perspective, that huge loss that brought them to me, the one that really brought them to their knees, as they start working through the program, they realize, yes, I do need to deal with that loss. But it was that loss that brought them to me to realize that really it went back to when they were 4, when
Wow.
they were 8, when they were 12. And what happens is our bodies were never meant to be storage facilities. Our bodies were designed to release these emotions.
Mm.
So, like any piece of equipment, if you use it improperly, it starts to break down.
Mm.
And so the depression, the anxiety, the insomnia, the eating disorders, all of this can possibly have a root basis in unresolved emotions. And that's why I say now, everybody, because people are, and I was too, I was shocked. I thought it was fine. I thought it was totally fine. When the Grief Recovery Institute asked me to make sure I'd healed my own broken heart before I helped others, I thought, okay, I'll take that to heart and I'll do it. Oh my gosh, Sabrina, you would not believe what showed up in my past that I thought I was fine with.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's my answer now. Everybody should do.
That's awesome. I get all of that for sure. Social media, you on any platforms that people can follow you on?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and I have my own website. And I'd like to really encourage people to go to the website. It's not a sales website. There's tons of free resources there. There's ebooks, there's questionnaires, there's videos. I intentionally built the website for people to have free resources as opposed to trying to sell my services. So, yeah, really encourage them to go there and have a look.
That's great. Well, this has been absolutely fabulous. I so appreciate you being here, hanging out with us. To those listening live or on the replay, Tammy, are you on Facebook and LinkedIn and so? Are you under your name or are you under Intuitive Understanding?
Some of them it's Tammy Adams, some of them it's Intuitive Understanding, but they will find me either way.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So for those of you that are really connecting and resonating with everything Tammy's talking about, make sure you follow her on social. And then her website is intuitiveunderstanding.com. It is in a clickable link in the description below wherever you are watching us at. So this has been great, Tammy. I so appreciate you sharing some of the intimate details of your entrepreneurial journey, along with your company, everything that you do for the humans out here as far as recovering from grief. Any closing thoughts as we start to wrap up?
Actually, I just really want to thank you for providing this platform. I think the conversations that you're having are so important to the success of the entrepreneurs that are tapping into this information. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to join the platform and just share a little bit of my story in hopes that it helps someone else. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. No problem. Thank you for being here. Well, that brings us to an end of yet another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. Thank you, Tammy, for all your goodness today. For those of you that are here live to the very end or on the replay, thank you so much for being here. Remember to follow, like, and share. Once again, my name is Sabrina Victoria. I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to uplift each other every step of the way by having conversations just like this one. That is also in a clickable link in the description below.